All right, guys. So one of the most powerful scenes in Matt Walsh's documentary, What is a Woman, involves a conversation between transgender man, Scott Newgent, who exposes what I believe to be the dark side of woke capitalism, which in my opinion is the main driver behind the push to have kids transition. And the reason why there's no medical pushback against trying to transition kids, even though we know how controversial these potentially permanent life-changing procedures can be. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this clip from this conversation in the documentary, What is a Woman? Take a look.
For the first time in history, a marginalized group has a huge dollar sign on the top of their head. We have 5 children's hospitals in the United States promoting that.
What?
That's a phalloplasty. That's a bottom surgery. We have 5 children's hospitals in the United States telling girls that they can be boys at $70,000 a pop in a surgery that has a 67% complication rate. That will kill me from infection that I can't sue on. We're butchering a generation of children because nobody's willing to talk about anything. I have 3 kids. At the age that they're doing this to kids, I'm not transphobic. I love my kids, and I love other people's kids, and you should too. This is wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, so I thought that scene was very powerful. And the reason why is because it gets to the root cause of why we're seeing this push to transition kids and why the medical community is turning their heads away from the fact that this stuff is potentially dangerous for children, right? They're trying to pretend like, oh, puberty blockers, they're reversible. Hormone treatments, don't worry about it. No big deal, right? No big deal that you're altering kids' hormones during a phase in their life in which, you know, they're just entering puberty and things like that. Don't worry about it, right? Totally normal stuff, totally reversible. They won't suffer any long-term effects, right? Let's just push it on kids and just pretend like it's normal. Well, the reason why they're doing that, guys, is because of money, right? Because of woke capitalism. And this is the downside of capitalism. Don't get me wrong, guys. I love capitalism, but I also can acknowledge that capitalism is not necessarily a moral system. I mean, in the sense that I think that it helps society as a whole. It is the best system for the well-being and to increase the standard of living of a society. I mean, I guess it would be the most moral system from that perspective, in my opinion. But there are other things that come along with capitalism that are not good, right? This is one of those things. And I've been making this argument for a long time that the reason why this is happening is not because these people are actually really woke, okay? They know that is wrong, right? They know this is not right. However, there's so much money to be made in pushing this lifestyle on kids. It effectively creates a new market, a very lucrative market that essentially is untapped, okay? And that is what is happening here. That's why you're not really seeing much pushback from the medical community. In fact, you have people coming out here again, pretending that there are no complications from this stuff. There's nothing that potentially goes wrong or anything like that. So with that being said, we're going to read about Scott's story here, okay? Because Scott is going to detail a lot of the medical issues that they had from their transition, right? Let's read this passage right here. It says, my medical complications have included 7 surgeries, a pulmonary embolism, an induced stress heart attack, sepsis, a 17-month reoccurring infection, 16 rounds of antibiotics, 3 weeks of daily IV antibiotics, arm reconstructive surgery, lung, heart, and bladder damage, insomnia, hallucinations, PTSD, $1 million in medical expenses, and loss of home, car, career, and marriage. All this, and yet I cannot sue the surgeon responsible, in part because there is no structured, tested, or widely accepted baseline for transgender healthcare. Now, the left will look at this and say, well, we need a structure for transgender healthcare to make sure this stuff is being done safely. And my argument is that no, we don't need that, right? We simply don't need to be pushing this type of healthcare, especially on kids. Now, if adults want to go through with it, fine. But at the end of the day, look, you got to accept the responsibility of what happens when you go through these surgical procedures. Okay? I'm not trying to remove personal responsibility here. And that is why it is so important to have open and honest conversations about the potential dangers of these medical treatments. Again, that they're trying to push on children, right? And there's another passage here that I found to be very, very, very informative from Scott, in which they talk about Big Pharma, right? And Big Pharma's role in this. So let's read this here. So, as I was recovering from several near-death experiences, I began to investigate medical transitioning and realized that trans health has no baseline for care. This was hammered home when several attorneys told me in no uncertain terms, trans health has no baseline. These medical complications you have, there's nothing to compare it to, so we can't help you sue. These are experimental procedures. People point to WPATH standards, but they are filled with at doctor's discretion, and that does not stand up in court. As I dug deeper, I discovered that Lupron, the pharmaceutical company that makes hormone blockers, didn't have FDA approval to treat children with gender dysphoria. Studies on this cohort had not been done, yet they claim it's reversible. Lupron was sued, lost to the U.S. government, and fined $874 million for false advertising and bribery, and deemed a criminal enterprise in 2001. And this is the company the world is listening to. Moreover, the original Dutch researchers who made the protocol to give puberty blockers to children with child onset gender dysphoria have just this winter come out and said there are no studies to support the new usage of puberty blockers for kids with sudden adolescent onset gender dysphoria. As I started to recover, I joined Twitter and the news kept getting worse. A 4,000% increase in children claiming to be trans and put in the meat market line to begin transition. I discovered that Lupron makes 8 times more profit when children are prescribed hormone blockers than when the prescription is written for children. Yes, you read that right. Truly, I could go on, and each fact would drop the jaw of the people who read this. You can learn more shocking facts about the medical complications at my website. All right, so basically, the argument that's been made here is that, well, these doctors, right, because there is no baseline for trans healthcare, people that go through these procedures don't have recourse when something goes wrong or when complications happen, right? They can't really do anything about it. They can't really sue. And on top of that, basically Big Pharma is making a killing off of this stuff, telling people that, hey, this stuff is reversible, right? How many times have you heard trans activists come out here and say, well, puberty blockers are okay because they're reversible? There's no studies to suggest that these puberty blockers are actually 100% reversible and that they don't cause any harm, right? There's no study to suggest that at all. And in fact, there's actually evidence to the contrary, right? As temporary use of Lupron hormones, the same company we're talking about here, has been associated with and may be the cause of many serious permanent side effects, including osteoporosis, mood disorders, seizures, cognitive impairment, and when combined with cross-sex hormones, sterility, right? So we're talking about taking away kids' abilities to have children, right? Again, this is some very, very, very dangerous things that we're pushing on kids here, right? In fact, the Karolinska University Hospital in Stockholm has actually prohibited the use of puberty blockers after giving this stuff to kids, and some kids getting injuries from it, right? Because there's no evidence to suggest that, again, this stuff is actually safe. But again, every time you look, what you hear is, no, it's 100% safe. It's 100% safe. You're just a bigot, right? You're a bigot for thinking that all these chemicals and drugs and procedures aren't safe for kids. So with that being said, again, my point of this video here, guys, is really to show you guys why this is being pushed and why people are pretending that there are no consequences to this stuff, because at the end of the day, it's really about the money, right? So let's break down some of the costs of, transitioning, and you guys tell me if you think this is a lucrative business. Hormone treatments involve estrogen for male to female patients and testosterone for female to male patients. Most patients, 75% to 78% of those seeking gender dysphoria care, will pursue hormone treatments, which are generally continued for the duration of the patient's life. While these drugs are not usually especially expensive, they can add up to more than $2,000 a year. So think about that, guys. It might not sound like a lot, But when you multiply that over the duration of somebody's life, okay, let's say they start when they're, 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old, or whatever. And what's the average lifespan in the United States? Like what, 80 years old, something like that? So let's say they're on this stuff for 60, 70 years. 70 times 2,000, that's $140,000 over a lifetime, right? $140,000. That is the lifetime value of putting a kid on hormones, right? Something they're going to have to be on for the rest of their lives. Again, that doesn't include all the other stuff that's associated with it. That's just the hormones. So let's read more here. Bottom surgery or changing the genitalia costs an estimated $25,600 for male to female patients and about $24,900 for female to male, according to the Philadelphia Center for Transgender Surgery. The center published a detailed price list of surgery and hospital anesthesia costs for common procedures, though costs may vary widely. Top breast surgery involving breast augmentation for male to female transition costs about $9,000. For female to male, top surgery involving mastectomy ranges from $7,800 to $10,900 depending on the amount of skin reduction. Masculinizing, $53,700, or feminizing up to $7,100. Facial surgery and body sculpting surgeries add to the cost. Wait. So I want y'all to understand, lifetime value, lifetime amount of money that can be made from transitioning a child, right? If they go through all these procedures, we're talking about upwards of maybe $200,000, $250,000, $300,000. Okay, now multiply that by 100,000 children, right? You get 100,000 children at $250,000 a pop, lifetime value. You're talking about $25 billion. $25 billion. Okay? Again, that's if you just get 100,000 kids. Just 100,000. Get 100,000 kids to go through this stuff, to transition, and do all this stuff. Bruh, that's what this is about. It's about money. Okay? And this is what I call the dark side of woke capitalism. This is why you're seeing this happen. It's a money grab. It is a new market being created, and unfortunately, they are trying to make money off these children, right? That is what they're doing. Big pharma's making money off of it. The medical community, these doctors that are performing these surgeries, they're making money off of it. That's exactly what's happening. And the people that are paying the price for it, the ultimate price for it, are not the surgeons. It's not big pharma, because again, they might get slapped on the wrist with a fine, but that's just the cost of doing business, right? That's the cost of doing business. The children are the ones that are suffering, right? When they grow older and they come to regret chopping off their penis, right? Or going through bottom surgery, top surgery, or whatever. When they come to regret that stuff, they're the ones who are going to be having these suicidal thoughts. They're the ones that are going to be looking back and saying, why did I do this? Why did my parent allow me to go through this? Why are there laws in place that allowed me to do this, right? They're the ones that are going to be suffering. And that's the sad part about this, guys. We have people being peer pressured into doing things, making permanent changes to their bodies that they're going to live to regret later on in life. And the people that are responsible for pushing this stuff on these kids, they're not going to suffer any of the consequences at all. Zero. But yet we're the bad people, conservatives, for simply pointing out that, hey, you know what? This is wrong. These kids don't know what they're going through. They don't know what they're doing. We need to warn them and tell them the truth about the potential side effects and permanent changes that will come from what they're doing. We need to have laws in place that prevent them from being able to do this. No. We're the bad guys because we're trying to protect these kids and their bodies and to protect them from making choices that they don't really understand. Yeah, not like we have laws in place that already protect kids from doing stuff like that. Like, for example, getting access to guns or getting access to, tobacco or alcohol or, things that harm kids. But for whatever reason, you're a bigot if you say maybe kids shouldn't have access to these drugs, right? These hormonal drugs, these puberty blockers. That makes you a bigot. We have a moral decay going on in our society. And I think that, again, this whole pushing kids into transitioning thing, that is kind of where the moral decay of our society has reared its head. This is where we're at. We're pushing kids into stuff like this. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.